Welcome to the Heads Up Poker Podcast. This is Steve Barton, and I'm here with
loyal assistant Mike Snyderman.
Mike Snyderman.
So how you doing these days, man?
Played the last several days out at the casino, and I got to play in a tournament. I haven't played in a tournament in probably months. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was a little 125 buy-in. I think maybe I'm a little too high up on my horse here, but I don't think I misplayed a single hand. I felt very, very confident in my play there. I was able to get all in for 30 blinds pre-flop with ace-queen suited against ace-9 suited. I don't remember how he won that one. I think I flopped an ace, and then he turned a flush or something, I think.
This was all in pre-flop?
All in pre-flop,
I assume he was shoving and not calling.
No, he was calling.
Wow.
Which was the beauty of it. And but he was such a calling station, I was like, I think he's going to call here. And I was right, and he did. And so I got in really good with him.
By the way, before we get going, we got to talk a little bit about what's happening on this show here. We have our first interview.
We do.
Which we both, hugging ourselves, believe went very well, which was pretty easy because we had a really interesting guest who you will hear shortly.
Yes, John Vorhaus. He's an interesting writer. I've read two of his books, Killer Online Poker and Killer Online Poker 2. And I've read those several years ago.
You're the one who found John for this interview. How are you introduced to him, or how'd you know about him?
Oh, well, I read a couple of his books several years ago, and then
strategy books.
Yeah, strategy books, poker online strategy books. And one of the guys that I work with, he told me that he has a friend who's a poker writer, and he wrote a couple of poker books, and oh, really? What are the name of the books? And he said, Killer Online Poker. And I said, I'll be damned. I've read that book. I said, is it John Vorhaus? He said, yeah, it is. I want to talk to him. And so he gave me his contact information, and now we've got him on an interview.
Pretty cool.
So, yeah. So
I mean, I was very psyched to talk to him because, I'm, one of the many things I've tried and failed at so far in life is writing. So when I saw, he's not just a couple poker books. This guy is prolific as a writer with books about writing and then books about poker. And now he's written a bunch of novels and,
comedy and
screenplays and this and that. Yeah. So he's, real interesting guy. We get into some of it, but if you want to go to his page and look at some of his biographical stuff, it's pretty interesting. He's traveled the world and done a lot of cool stuff. So I think it's a real good interview and people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. I had no idea he wrote a book with Andy Duke. I'd only known those two books that I read was the online poker one, and
he does get a little testy when I bring up Andy Duke, just for the
he does.
spoiler alert here.
He does.
I don't know. Something about my personality. Why do I have to annoy everyone? I could have just sat back and listened to some lovely anecdotes.
I don't think he was annoyed. He asked us to have him on again, and I think we will. He was funny. It was a good interview, but I think you guys will like it.
Let's get to it then, man. Let's get to the gold here.
Okay, yeah, you guys are listening to the interview. We got a couple little strategy hands at the end, so hope you guys enjoy the show. And without further ado, here is John Vorhaus. Well, thank you for coming on our show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Right on, good deal. What you been up to today?
I had a colonoscopy, if you want to know the truth.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was big fun. Actually, the high point of it, of an otherwise grim experience, and I'm talking about 2 days of fasting and horrible stuff you don't want to hear about. But when they started the procedure, the guy put a mask over my mouth, and he said, "This is oxygen." I took a couple of deep breaths and it started to feel really good. I said to myself, that ain't oxygen.
I'm about to get violated in the colonoscopist
office.
Yeah,
don't even care because They're giving me, and then I just woke up and it was all over. It was fine. It's a funny thing. Just because of what the procedure is, it sounds like a joke and people treat it like a joke. But if you said, I was going in for a PET scan on my brain, nobody would make all the obvious jokes there are to make.
Yeah.
Just an unfortunate body part. Well, what are you going to do?
I don't know. There's something about things that go in and out of your ass that you just, it's not the funnest procedure.
Well,
while we're discussing the sunny side of horrible medical procedures, I'd like to point out you can also get high without actually any of this. So, there's
wow, that's news.
But it's good to focus on the positive, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, there are benefits. It reminds me of a joke. Whenever I see the words, alcohol may intensify effect on the bottle of pills. Mm-hmm. I think, great, instructions.
At least they're telling me how to take it.
Exactly.
One of my favorite comic pieces. I don't know if you've read any of Steve Martin's short comic fiction.
Yes, but
he's got one, the instructions on the side of a bottle, and as a joke of don't do this, he goes on for about 2.5 pages. It's like, for God's sakes, don't eat yak. I mean, I forget, it has all sorts of ridiculous things there, but yeah. Well, John, I got to say, when Steve told me we were interviewing you, I immediately got into research mode here.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be like 15 minutes. I thought that would be like 15 minutes on the internet, but I've spent like a day and a half here, and I've barely scratched the surface here of your biography.
It goes on a bit.
And the first thing when I do is I looked at your resume there, and I want to know how much of it is bullshit, or is it all? Were you really on an ultimate frisbee world championship team?
Incredibly enough, I was. First of all, this is real, right? This isn't just a warm up. We're actually talking for public consumption at this point.
Yeah, we can edit out or put in whatever you want. But I started recording the minute you picked up the phone.
You might want to edit out the part where I'm asking, "Are we recording?" But other than that, it's fine.
Yeah.
People want to know what went up my butt today. That's their business. I don't think they're going to be too happy knowing about it. But yes, do you know the sport of ultimate frisbee? Do you know what it is?
A little bit, yeah.
So it's a team sport and it's a field sport, and it's been around since the late 1960s, and it's been in international competition since, I would say, the 80s or so. It happens that in 1990 they had the first international competition for Masters Division, which is over 30 years of age, at a time when there were very few players who were in the sport of that age, and almost no Masters teams outside the United States. So I basically got onto the U.S. national team on the strength of a good letter and kind of just being there. And then we went to Oslo for the World Championships and crushed the half a dozen teams we played because they just really didn't know what they were doing. And thus I backed into an authentic and legitimate international gold medal in athletics.
Wow, that is so cool.
That is cool.
And
did it go to your head? Did it go to your head there?
Well, no, because this from a guy who was voted in high school least likely to complete the 50-yard dash.
And you're winning a gold medal. I
love it. So I'm aware of both the honor and the irony of it. Neither is lost upon me. I'm really happy that it's part of my whole life resume, but I also know that it has an asterisk as big as a steroid.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it definitely jumps out on your resume there.
Well, Ultimate's a great game. I won't play again until tomorrow. So.
Okay. Yeah. I was looking. You do a lot of trips down to Nicaragua, right?
I have been. I developed 2 television shows there, and this really sounds weird coming from a guy who you're interviewing on the strength of his poker chops. But I travel all over the world creating television shows and teaching and training writers. And in Nicaragua, I'm particularly involved in what's called social action TV, which is basically television that's designed to help the young people of Nicaragua think for themselves and practice safe sex.
How'd you get into that project? Because looking at all your credits, you're a comedy writer, right? I mean, I don't want to box you in, and this is obviously a
serious enterprise. It didn't start out that way. The short version of the story is I was teaching at the American Film Institute at a certain point in time, and a young lady came up from Nicaragua to take classes in comedy writing, actually not classes that I happened to be teaching. The class that she wanted to take didn't fill. There weren't enough people, so she kind of got shut out. And she went to them and said, hey, you got to find me somebody to teach me how to be funny. And they said, well, Vorhaus is your guy. And they put us together, and she came over to see me. And as soon as I caught wind of the fact that she actually wanted to make a TV show in Nicaragua, I immediately dealt myself in. I just couldn't think of anything that would be more fun and interesting and worthwhile. She had in mind, or they had in mind, to do what they imagined would be a situation comedy. It wasn't until we got into development that we realized that maybe comedy wasn't exactly the way to go. So we ended up with more like a comedy with drama at the end of the day.
Right. Well, I really want to talk about the writing. I just read your novel, The Albuquerque Turkey, which I really enjoyed.
Thank you very much.
But Steve, this is a poker podcast, so maybe we should talk a little poker first, and then I, as an aspiring writer, then I can pound on John and try to find some nugget of wisdom to help myself here. No, to discuss his fine books. But yeah, amongst your many jobs, we saw that you were a poker prop, and that naturally jumped out at us.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. How did you get started playing poker? Did you start like everyone else when you were a little kid playing penny ante poker?
Yeah, we played around the kitchen table, my family. We played wild card games, crazy games.
Yeah.
Played it off and on in high school, off and on in college. I remember one game in particular in college. We started at some hour of the evening, and I believe Uzo was involved. I would be surprised if it wasn't. And we played and we played and we played and we played, and at some point somebody looked out the window and said, hey, when did these lights get here? And, of course, it wasn't lights, it was dawn.
The sun.
So we had played through the night without really realizing it. And that's kind of the first time I realized that there was something really beguiling about poker, the way it steals your time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Uzo. But my professional interest began, or let's say my public cardroom interest began in 1988. I was a member of the Writers Guild of America, and the Writers Guild went on strike. So for a certain period of time, I could not ply my trade. And during that time, I found my way into the Commerce Casino here in beautiful and lovely Commerce, California.
Yeah.
Sat down in a game of, I believe it was a $20 buy-in 7-card stud, and they went through me like a freight train through the wind. I said to myself, wow, hey, this is really fun. But I can't afford to lose at it. I got to get good.
Yeah.
And so I adopted a strategy that I've used many times in my life, and the strategy is this. When you want to learn how to do something, find someone to pay you to teach it. So I reached out to Card Player Magazine, which had just started up at the time, and I said, look, I know nothing about poker, but I'm going to learn, and while I'm learning, I want to write about it. And here's a sample column. And they said, yeah, man, come on down. So that's how I started how I started writing about poker, because it was a writing gig at a time when I needed a writing gig. And it was a chance to get good at the game, basically at somebody else's expense.
Yeah.
So, but the prop story was not too much longer after that. There was a short-lived casino here in Southern California called the Regency. And they were hiring props. And for your listeners who don't know what a prop is, you're getting paid, I think I was getting paid $8 an hour, but you're playing with your own bankroll. And I thought, geez, with an $8 an hour head start, there's no way I can lose. I'm sure you know where this story is going, because if you know anything about propping, they put you in the worst games and take you out of the best games all day, every day. And I pretty quickly calculated that my win rate was negative $300 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And so that turned out to be a job I could not afford to keep.
Not a long-term job. Yeah.
No. I didn't have the temperament for it anyhow. I didn't have the game for it. I thought it'd be easy, and it was not.
I play at a casino in San Diego area here, and there's a poker prop I talked to, and a lot of time you got to play short-handed too.
Right, which now I love, but at the time it made no sense. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're skilled, but you could be in a game you're not totally comfortable with, and just you can happen to you have two good players there. I mean, you got to keep at it.
You got to stay because you're the prop, and you get crushed.
Yeah. Okay.
Times, good time.
Yeah, and they'll put you in any game, right? I mean, you play PLO or you play Jazz or whatever they got. Huh?
If you're going to be a prop who gets work, you know, a self-respecting one, as opposed to the jamoke I was, you got to know every game and play every limit. You have to play the biggest games in the house, and you might not be rolled for that. And we know what a BITCH variance can be.
Yes, very true.
And I looked you up on Hendon, and at some point you got the tournament bug a little bit. You got some results there.
My high water mark in tournament poker was, as I'm sure you know, since you have big brothered my butt.
Sorry.
That's okay. I would expect nothing less of Big Brother. I finished 9th at final table of the 2006 seniors event of the World Series of Poker. And that was a decent chunk of change. A little bit of regret that I didn't do better, but, you know, Ace-Jack will only go so far against Ace-Ace. And
that's true.
These things happen.
You'll always remember your bust-out hand if you run late in a tournament.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
but
so true.
But what I really remember about that summer, I was in Vegas for 6 weeks, blogging for Ultimate Bet and doing color commentary for Bluff Magazine. And that's the way to do a poker tournament. I mean, no stress, guaranteed paycheck, all the poker you want, but on your own terms. So
yeah.
that was kind of fine by me.
Now, how did you get hooked up with Card Player? Maybe this is something you could do, Mike. I mean, you like to write. I enjoy writing too. Maybe I could do it as well, but that'd definitely be some variance-free income. Who did you approach? How did you get a hold of him? Is there an 800 number on the back of the magazine I've never noticed? Or
at the time, Linda Johnson owned the magazine. She doesn't now. The Schulmans have it. But I wrote a query letter. I'm sure. The address is there, and this was before the internet, so I probably in fact, I know. I sat down and I wrote a sample column called Notes from the Nervous Breakdown Lane. It was basically my proposition that I was going to learn about the game and study it and relate my findings to readers.
Okay.
And if you've read my stuff, you know that there's one thing I can do is walk my way around a sentence.
Yeah, you can.
Definitely.
And so I don't think it was that hard to sell. So when I started writing poker books, I could really write from the point of view of players because I could think of myself as a character in a story. I could just be very empathetic to the player's experience. And as a writer, I was trained to record my own experience and play it back, so to speak, in a way that people found palatable.
Yeah.
Now, this is 2015, so that means that I've been writing for Card Player or various other poker magazines for more than a quarter of a century. And the principle behind that is something that every poker player understands, and that principle is never leave money lying on the table.
Right.
As long as they keep paying me to write about poker, I'm going to keep writing about poker, even if I kind of don't need that paycheck anymore, just because I never know when I might need that paycheck, and I'm going to keep my hand in as long as possible.
Sure. Speaking of money at the table, the tournament that you final tabled, I just quickly looked. First place was like $260,000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the time, where you're hustling for jobs, was that, or were you just grateful to go so far? You must have thought, wow.
I cashed for $24,000, which made my bankroll, gave me a bankroll that I could do things with.
Okay.
But I never really, I don't believe I much incorporated that money, and it certainly wasn't life-changing money.
Right. Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, I know it seems if you were writing poker books for a while and then you switched to being, or maybe you were always a novelist, you just hadn't, that's what maybe your focus is on now. I was just thinking at the time you could have, I'm picturing at the final table, say, my God, there's no more, I don't have to write about poker anymore. I can work on my novel if I win at 200. I could have 3 years off where I do nothing but work on my masterpiece. You
know what? Perhaps if I had won and banked $200,000, I might have thought that. But $24,000 wasn't life-changing money. It just wasn't.
Sure.
But to go deeper, delve deeper into the story, when the poker boom hit around 2003, I reached out to my agent. His name is Greg Dinkin, and you might know him. He's written a wonderful book called The Poker MBA. And
I've heard of that.
And it was kind of, well, he's writing for Card Player and I'm writing for Card Player, but I see he's an agent. So I reach out to him and I say, it seems like this poker's getting pretty hot right now. I'll bet I could sell a book in this market. And his response to me was one I'll never forget. It's really instructive. He said, I don't think I can sell a book, but I know I can sell 3. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I can go to Kensington Press and propose a series, the Killer Poker series. That's a slam dunk. That sells itself. One book's no good, but a brand, that's got some value in the marketplace. I said, I don't have three books worth of poker in me. He said, sure you do. He's always doing that. So I was like, you can write it. You can write it now. You can write it fast. No problem. And he was right. I kept on finding newer things to write about. So I sold the first 3, and they said, these are great. Can we get another 3? And I said, yeah, but I want the last one in the series to be a novel. I want to do a combination murder mystery teaching tool, a how-to whodunit, if you will. Huh. And they said, okay, well, we buy that, and they bought it, and that became a wonderful novel called Under the Gun, and I don't know if it's crossed your radar or your reader's radar.
I have it in my hand. I have it in my hand, actually, right now. That's my next book I'm going to read.
There you know. For those in the listening audience, it's the story of a guy who doesn't know the first thing about poker, doesn't even know what beats what. But his brother is a big deal tournament player in Vegas, but his brother's murdered. And in his brother's hand, he finds a tournament entry chip to the world's biggest poker tournament. And the only way he can solve the mystery is to skill himself up well enough in poker to go deep in the tournament and find out who the bad guy is. So it literally takes the reader from what beats what to the highest levels of tournament strategy. It's really cool in that sense. Plus, it's great mystery and a good yarn and brilliantly written, if I do say so myself.
I can tell I'm going to like it. I only read the first 20 pages. I just started it, actually.
You definitely will like it. Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I've written 7 novels, and some of them are really, really to be cherished on I don't know, philosophical level. They're all meaningful to me. They're my precious children. But something about Under the Gun, man, I just feel like I got the right combination of innocence and enthusiasm for the story, plus knowledge about how to tell the story. Before that time, it was not enough knowledge and too much enthusiasm. And after that time, at times, it's been too much knowledge and not quite enough enthusiasm, or let's say not enough puppy dog enthusiasm. So I think that Under the Gun will always occupy a special place in my heart for that reason.
Yeah, I read your Killer Online Poker and then Killer Online Poker 2. Mm-hmm. And I haven't read any of your other books, but those 2 I read at a point in my life where I had I was injured at work, and I couldn't do anything. I was used to working overtime at work, and when you're on injury, you're making a lot less than that. And I had to come up with a way to that I could make some kind of money doing something. And the only thing I knew at the time was poker. This was probably, 6 or 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was at home on the computer. I treated it like a job. I played 8 hours a day. I joined a training site, made videos for them. And I just devoured any book I could on online poker, and 2 of your books were them. And it was good for me because I was able to, I think that was really where I was kind of able to get a good foundation for myself. I was just able to see tens of thousands of hands and just repetition. And I would go and I would play heads up, and you got a really good heads up section in there that was good for me. And I would just go and play heads up, and I'd play that for 2 weeks. And then I'd just play sit and goes, and I'd play those for 2 weeks. And then I'd play tournaments, and I'd play those for a month. And then I would play cash, and I would just jump from one thing to the next, trying to always just, maybe not necessarily master one principle, but just get extremely good, better than 90% of the competition at that one aspect of poker, and then move on to the next thing. And I really do believe that now that's kind of laid the foundation for my success now as a player, is those 6 months of me just sitting in front of the computer, playing 4 tables at a time, just hand over hand over hand over hand, It was a routine. Every morning I'd wake up and stretch and try to get better so that I could be back to work. And the rest of the 8 hours every day was just spent playing poker and reading books. It was fun.
So John is one of the reasons you now make $2.33 an hour playing online poker.
Playing online poker, yes. If it wasn't for him, I'd be minus...
It was a good investment.
Yes. Yes,
don't thank me. I define myself through service.
Can I ask one more question about the books here that just jumped out at me? I saw that one of them you co-wrote with Annie Duke.
Yeah. Decide to play poker. Look,
who is, as you know, probably, I don't know if you follow the poker forums and stuff, who is like public enemy number one in the poker world. I don't know how much of that is because she's
Have they not gotten over it yet? She's not even in the poker world anymore.
Well, that's true. There was a recent post on 2+2 about somebody saw her with a bodyguard, and that got everybody worked up again about, well, she needs one, kind of thing.
I'm completely ignorant when it comes to the news. I don't watch the news. What happened? Fill me in. What happened with Annie Duke?
She was a terrific woman poker player who spoke her mind, and the trolls couldn't handle her. That's my opinion. I don't know. Anything that anybody wants to say about Annie Duke based on their perception of her, I'll measure against having worked with her for 20 years and written the best poker book of my life with her.
Well, that's what I wasn't trying to start a content. I basically was curious if you were friendly with her. So it sounds like
yeah. Well, we go back. She launched a magazine called Poker World back in the 90s and hired me to write poker fiction. So that was my first actual experience getting paid to write short stories, which was wonderful. Then when she joined Ultimate Bet, she hired me to blog for them, and I got to go to Aruba and all these fabulous places and get my tournament reporting chops. And then along about 2000, I don't know when it was, we decided we're going to write a poker book together. In that book, all the brilliant concepts are hers and all the pretty words are mine. But if you want a poker book that will challenge your understanding and revolutionize your game, that's the one. It's head and shoulders above anything I've ever written, certainly, and head and shoulders above anything I've ever read. As far as I'm concerned, it'll stand the test of time alongside Super System. And it's not just because I wrote it and, I'm that guy. I know Killer Poker Online isn't going to stand the test of time. It's already been blown out by, overtaken by events, as you know. But Annie's approach to the game, as recorded in in Decide to Play Great Poker, is an enduring and unfailing approach. Now, the punchline to that joke is, no sooner did I write Decide to Play Great Poker than I decided I'm going to spoof myself, and I wrote a book called Decide to Play Drunk Poker.
I saw that one on Amazon.
Yeah, which makes me, I think, the only author in the world to write both the book and the parody of the book.
Probably.
And for fans of audio, which you might imagine people listening to podcasts are, Annie did an audio version of Decide to Play Great Poker. So, just think about having Annie Duke in your ear telling you how to play poker while you're driving to the club. A lot of people have found that to be a money-winning proposition.
Huh.
That's cool. Where do you get that? Audible.com?
Audible, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of interesting, there's also, after reading the Albuquerque Turkey, I immediately got online and I saw there was, I don't know, what do you call it, a little movie video introduction to it?
Oh, yeah, That's called a book promo video.
Oh, book. So is that something that a lot of people do? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were doing that to maybe increase the possibility of it getting sold to a movie studio or something.
Yeah, nobody from any movie studio has expressed any interest in that book, to my everlasting regret.
Huh? Yeah, because that seemed very cinematic to me.
Yeah,
especially it's got the whole. Not to ruin it for people who want to read it, because it is a very good book. But especially the whole ending though was this visual. Where I'm like, this has got to be a movie.
Well. Life is long. We'll see.
Yeah, because I was also I'm sorry if this is perplexing that I've looked at everything you've done and all, but I was watching some interview you did. I believe it was in Germany, where you talked about building the brand as a writer.
Yeah, that was a good one, huh?
Which I thought was really interesting, and just as a writer here, you've been prolific. You've written a bunch of books, and it's like. If the Albuquerque Turkey or Lucy in the Sky were to become a movie, do you no longer have to worry about building the brand? Is that like the ambition?
First of all, I reject your proposition. I don't think I will ever have to not worry about building the brand.
Okay.
Even if it gets, hey, I've got a movie you won't, maybe you know this. I have a movie premiering at Sundance Film Festival next week. It's a documentary I wrote called Misery Loves Comedy. And it asks the question, do you have to be screwed up to be a stand-up comic, or does stand-up comedy screw you up? And it's directed by Kevin Pollak, and it's a serious movie, and I'm going to Sundance, and I'm going to see my movie, my documentary debut. But it's not going to change.
Congratulations.
Well, the only way it's going to move my brand or expand my brand is if I meet people who are excited about what I have, like personally meet them. It might raise my Twitter following by an eyelash, but right. The way I look at it is the internet is global, and I'm just this little park, like an amusement park, tiny little small town amusement park, and all I can do is try to keep expanding the borders of the park. But I don't imagine that it's in the cards for me to become life-changing famous.
Right. I was just curious because, like I said, it was very. I thought the Albuquerque turkeys was very movie worthy, and I was just curious if that was high on your list of ambitions to see.
To answer the question you're not asking, I never have really hustled to sell movie rights on anything because I just don't like that. I like writing.
Yeah,
and I don't really hugely enjoy engaging with Hollywood. You'll notice from my resume that almost all of my television and film work has been overseas.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been out of the U.S.
Yeah. Partly because Hollywood won't have me, and partly because I won't have Hollywood. I have to tell you a hilarious story. Can I use adult language on this broadcast? Do we care?
You can. It's marked as explicit.
Okay, so, well, I wrote Under the Gun, and it happens that when it came out, I was working in Russia, of course, because why wouldn't I be? I was the head writer for the Russian version of Married with Children, of course, because why wouldn't I be? And I gave that novel, Under the Gun, to a colleague of mine, and he gave it to his Filipina housekeeper who was learning to read English. And so she sat down and compiled a list of all the words and phrases in the book that she didn't understand, and had me sit with her and explain what they meant. And a lot of it was poker slang, because it's a poker novel, and a fair amount of it was words that I had made up or repurposed in one way or another. But she comes across this one, she says, now this phrase here, mayonnaise motherfucker, when do I use that? Yeah, not so much with the mayonnaise motherfucker. Don't use that one.
You said save it for special occasions.
Save it for special occasions. Yeah. Save it for the boss.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I mean. Your love of language certainly comes through. Is that something? I mean, do you remember when you first wanted to be a writer, or were you always very bookish as a kid?
I know for a fact that I was making up words as early as the third grade. Because I had a conversation with a childhood friend of mine, and he remembers that I invented a character. Do you remember pink pearl erasers, those little rubber erasers? Sure. Not square, but obloid or
yeah, they were like a rhombus or a
trapezoid. That's it.
Yeah.
And I remember sticking paper clips in one of those and drawing a face on it, and it looked vaguely like a frog, and I named it Freddie Flypogger, with flypogger being the act, or flypogging being the act of snagging a fly. So as early as that, I was inventing words, and I've always loved language. It's my palette. It's my color tray. It's my deck of cards. It's my tools. All of that stuff. I
also want to share one more here for if there's any bookish people listening to this, is the VPM, the verbal prostate massage.
Yeah, that's.
I thought that was. I'm assuming that's an original one too.
That's an original one, but I pass it off as con artist slang because the book you're talking about, the Albuquerque Turkey, is one of 3 books that I wrote featuring world-class con artist Radar Hoverlander and his band of merry misfits, and I was constantly inventing words and phrases for the con artist milieu, and VPM, verbal prostate massage, is really one of my favorite. But this goes back to the idea of brand. expand my brand by being more me. In teaching writers how to be good writers, and here we go, one of the things that I'm really fond of saying is keep giving them you until you is what they want. You have a voice, you have a point of view.
I love it. Yeah.
Some people might try to put you into a particular genre, and you might actually fit in that genre, but your job isn't to fit into a genre. Your job is to find your voice and then promote your voice and sell your voice and create a market for your voice so you can keep speaking in your voice.
Is another interview I was listening to, might have been the same one in Germany, where you referred to Lucy in the Sky as my darling.
Yeah.
Is it now that you're writing coming of age or voice fiction? So do you feel liberated? You're no longer trying to write a genre piece that will.
I've written 2 novels in the last couple of years that are set in the past. Lucy in the Sky, that takes place in 1969, and then Pool's Paradise, that takes place in 1974. Pool's Paradise is my most recent novel and my best, I think. But they have this in common. They're young people trying to come to terms with the time and their place. And I kind of want to help young people in this time and this place come to terms with it by reflection. Here's what these guys did in their time. This is what they made of their circumstances. Now, what do you make of your circumstances? That's kind of what I'm interested in. So those books I describe as they're for young seekers and old geezers.
Oh, for people who it'll resonate with young readers, but also for people who grew up in that time.
People who lived through that time. I had one. I'm happy to say I got a nice fan letter from somebody saying I kept looking at my computer to figure out how you got in there. So
somebody thought you were stealing their memoirs they were writing about the same.
But we had an interesting conversation. We went back and forth in email a few times, and it turns out what she was really saying was you were really affected by the 60s and the 70s, and I was really affected by the 60s and 70s. And I'm like, yeah, so they were very affecting times. They were very potent, life-changing times for a lot of people. We went through the same experiences. It shouldn't be surprising that we have the same point of view. Or to put it another way, we all drank the same Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't laced with strychnine. I'm just saying.
Where do you get the ideas for the cons and stuff in these books? I haven't read any of them, but I imagine there's some cons in there.
Some of them are kind of repurposed and modernized. In my first Radar Hoverlander novel, The California Roll, the big con was something called a penny skim. They figured out that they could rob the National Bank of China by skimming a tenth of 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 a cent off every transaction. It has its roots in something that goes back to the first minted coins. You know how you look at a quarter and you see how it has serrated edges?
Yeah, the edges are kind of ruffled around.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered why that was?
No.
Well, here's the answer that you never asked. If you have those rough edges and people file some of it off, then you can tell that it's been tampered with. It's been reduced. Now, that's not really a big deal for us because those coins are made out of brass and tin and base metals.
They're not made out of silver anymore.
Silver and gold, if you could take a gold coin, shave a little bit of it off, and sell it at face value, what's going to happen?
Yeah, okay.
Over time, you're going to get rich because you're making money. You're making a penny on every coin that passes through your hand.
Yeah.
And that's called churn, right?
Okay.
So you got excellent churn. Unfortunately, you're also going to debase the currency and cause inflation and ultimately kill the economy. And that's called Bitcoin. And so they put the serrated edges on as a security device. That's what they were originally. So I just put that into a computer and let it go. I took an old scam and updated it. Others I just kind of invented. I thought, this might work. I would say that I have an imagination that works around the edges of honesty. I don't really go there in my life because I'm a chicken shit.
Okay.
But I never stop speculating. If I were trying to beat this illegally, how would I do it? Or if
how would I do it? What angle could I do? Yeah.
So can I ask what you're writing now, or is that's taboo not to discuss projects in the process?
Of course. Hey, we started this conversation with a colonoscopy. I don't believe that there are many places I want to go.
I'm feeling self-conscious about being too probing here now.
Thank you. Ouch. Right now, I'm actually writing a sitcom for German television.
You speak German?
No.
So how do you
stop me? This is what washes up on my beach, man. I'm so lucky to have the life I have. This guy read my book, The Comic Toolbox, became a fan, rose up in his industry, and finally came around to me and said, hey, I have this sitcom idea, and I want you to write it, and here's some money. And the idea is kind of charming. Basically, it's this. 2 knuckleheads inherit a robot. Gee, I can write that. I can have a lot of fun with that. So that's what I'm working on now.
So you just write it in English, and they'll translate everything in German, or?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's interesting. Germany builds the best cars in the world and does the best of everything, but apparently comedy writers, they need to, go overseas.
Well, they are not a notoriously funny folk, the Germans.
No. The Russians either. I guess that's why they're your 2 best clients, perhaps, right?
The Russians. I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I went to teach comedy writing in Germany, I started out my presentation this way. I sat down with the class and I said, I told all my friends in Los Angeles that I was going to Germany to teach comedy writing. They all thought that was pretty funny. And the class laughed. They had a good spirit about it. But this one guy leans forward. He puts his hands on the table. He says, these friends of yours, tell us their names. So, that's a guy who knows what's funny.
Yeah.
and he knows the German reputation.
Yeah.
Let's do that poker hand, shall we?
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Playing 2-3 no limit. And we got one guy who's been straddling every time it comes around to him. I think there was one other guy straddling at the table. We play 9-handed. And he throws out a $6 straddle. A guy in middle position calls the $6 straddle. Another guy in middle position calls $6. And then me, the hero, I'm in late position. I think I'm in the cutoff. I know I'm not on the button. I believe I'm in the cutoff. And I have 6-4 of hearts.
And of course you raise.
What's that?
I said, of course you raise, because that's totally raising hand.
Well, what would you guys do in this spot? Would you call, dump it, raise?
I like any suited connectors. Sure, I want to play, especially if it's a looser table.
That's not a suited connector. That's a suited one gapper.
There you go.
Suited connector-ish, I meant to say.
My favorite name for that hand is stupid connectors. Look, the sensible thing to do with that hand is fold. Obviously, you have a crap hand. Just wait. You know that those games are loose enough that all you really need to do to make money in them is play better poker than the idiots.
Yeah.
Of which there is no shortage in most public card rooms. That said, if I'm playing that hand at all, I'm playing it for a raise, a big raise, with the intention of, how many did you say had limped in, had called the straddle?
There was the straddle and then 2 players ahead of me.
Okay.
But the straddle, I should say, he only has another $21.
Oh, so he's going no matter what.
He's in no matter what.
Okay, so that changes it. If you know the straddler is going to put in his last money, then you have to have a hand that beats a random hand.
Yeah.
I'm making that play with 10 king. I'm making that play with any ace. I'm making that play with any pair, because I figure if my mission succeeds, and by the way, now I'm going to vastly overbet the pot, because my goal is specifically to drive out everybody except the what the hell money.
Yeah.
And figure that what the hell money is going to be what the hell with 6-4 suited, because it's a suited connector, or I want to go home, or what the hell, just whatever version of what the hell you want to look at.
Yeah, he's got 8-9, and he's like, well, I could make a straight.
Right. So you're looking to leverage the dead money to get your money in at a favorable price. And you can even do that with a hand that's sub-premium, because if there's enough dead money in there so that you're getting, let's say you're approaching 2-1 on your money, then you don't have to be a favorite. You can be even money in terms of card strength and still make money because the pot's letting you out. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, yeah.
Now, looking at it as if the straddler had deeper stacks, let's say effective stacks, or what'd you say, it was a 2-3 game?
2-3 game, yeah. Most guys have between $150 and $300.
Okay, so in that case, if there's one limper, you said the one limper or two limpers?
2 limpers.
Okay, 2 limpers, I'm sort of thinking I'm going to be sensible with my 6'4" and just wait for better times. But if I think that the 2 limpers can't stand the heat of a race, then I figure I've got 2 random hands and 2 limpers that I think I can make fold. At that point, it doesn't matter what my cards are. I'm going to put in a pot-sized bet and see if I can get everybody to go away. If they don't go away, I'm probably buying position because my pot-sized bet is bloated because it's a straddled hand, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm in the cutoff, I only have to get past the
button.
The button, and then whoever does stick around, they're out of position.
Yeah, at least you got position on them.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. Okay, well, with all that in mind, I called.
Yeah. That's the one thing I wouldn't do. It certainly is beguiling. Hey, I'm getting a great price. I could flop a great hand, But then what happens? You flop what's the best hand you're hoping to flop there? I mean, apart from made hands, you're hoping to flop an open-ended straight draw or a flush draw. But any flush draw you flop, you can't love because you don't have the nuts or anywhere near to the nuts. Yeah. And if there's heat, then you got to wonder, is somebody else driving the same hand but a better hand? Even if you get your miracle, man, and flop a flush, how happy are you? Because any 4th card in that suit absolutely kills you. And any ace or any king in that suit is absolutely going to play no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So you hit your hand and then you're hating life.
Yeah, that's a good point. You talked about that in your book.
So you went ahead and limped and joined the limpede.
Yes, I joined the limpede, yes. The small blind came along and the big blind came along.
They're saying, I got a great price, and you know that their hand can't be any better or worse than yours because they're playing the same crap you're playing.
Yes, yeah.
So $36. $36.
$36, the straddler checks, and we go to the flop.
Okay.
And the flop is 4 of clubs, 4 of spades, 9 of diamonds.
Oh, that's a pretty good flop for your hand.
That's what I was thinking.
Unless somebody's got ace-4, and suddenly ace-4 is in everybody's range.
Yes. The small blind checks, the big blind checks, and then the UTG, the under the gun straddler, goes in for his last $21.
Yeah.
And that to me was just extra money. And one of the middle position limper folds, and then the other middle position limper calls. So right now we got $78 in the pot. And it's 21 for me to call. What would you guys do at this point? You got 78 in the pot. It's on you. You flopped trips, which is probably about as good as it's going to get with 6-4, aside from flopping a straight flush or something. And you've got, let's see, you've got the small blind and the big blind behind you.
I'm having trouble visualizing it. The UTG, the straddler went in for 21 and you got one caller and one fold behind.
Yeah, he got one fold and then one caller behind, and then it's on me.
And that was just a call.
It was just a call. Yeah, he only called.
How deep is that guy?
That guy has about 6 or 7, but it wasn't from skill. It was he could have had like Jack 9, and he flopped a 9 and thought that, well, I'm probably good against the the UTG guy that only had $21 behind, because at that point he's probably shoving King 10 or whatever, whatever he had.
Right. But he's forgetting that if he calls, the world is going to call. So he forgot to raise there, is what you're saying.
It could be, yeah. I at that point when he called, I thought, he's probably got a 9.
When he called on the flop.
When he called on the flop, yeah.
Okay, so I'm kind of with you. There are no draws to consider there. So he can have a 9, or what is the functional equivalent of a 9, pocket 10s, yeah. Even pocket 8s. He might feel like his middle pair is good against the what the hell money.
Yeah.
So the only hand you're really afraid of, there's 2 hands you're afraid of, is a better 4 or a set of 9s.
Yeah.
A slow played set of 9s. Geez, it's a tricky situation, because if you raise, you want to raise big enough to drive out the blinds, but that guy calls. If he calls, okay, maybe he's got ace-9 and he thinks he's good. He thinks you're out of line, so then we got to think about what he thinks our image is. In other words, can we get him to convince himself with his top pair, top kicker, that we're out of line? There's a wonderful saying, I don't know if I made it up or heard it somewhere, but it goes like this. If all the money goes in the middle with top pair, top kicker, somebody made a mistake.
Right. If you're putting him on a 9, there's probably not a lot of reason to raise here, unless he's just a calling station and stubborn. But he does have a lot of chips, so he might be kind of chip drunk if he's been on the better side of variance too. But basically, he's nearly drawing dead.
Yeah.
If he's, I mean, at this point, he would be, you know,
he'd be drawn to a 9.
He's 9% to win the hand or something.
So then we agree to protect most against a hand we can't beat, like a set of 9s or better 4. We don't raise. To encourage further participation from a hand we can beat, like ace-9 or an overpair, we don't raise. Moral of the story, we don't raise.
That was my thought. My thought was, if I raise here, the only hands that are calling me is a better 4 and a full house, like pocket 9s, and everything that I'm beating is full.
Don't forget, at this table, 4-9 is also a possibility.
That's
right.
True. It is. It's highly possible in the
the blinds, if you flat here, I'd be curious if the blind re-raises. I don't know if you were thinking about this, the possibility. What are you doing if the blinds re-raise? I mean, I guess you got to go. You got trips.
Flat and the blinds re-raise, and I don't think the blinds are capable of a steal play there. It would be a squeeze of a sort. Then I fold. I figure I'm beat.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at. I thought if I call, at least I'll keep the hands in that I'm beating. And, of course, I'm not getting any better hands to fold, whether I raise or call.
Right. In Decide to Play Great Poker, Annie points out that a call there is actually stronger than a raise, because you're basically saying to the hands behind you, I don't care what you do.
Huh. Interesting.
Which is an interesting way of looking at it.
Well, that's true too. The guy who flats with, let's just say, his Jack-9, if you raise, is saying, well, he'd never do that with a 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he might think your flat range is much stronger than your raising range. It depends. But
circumstances than the one we're talking about, there is a good argument for raising there. There's a good rationale for it. So what happened? What did you do?
Well, I called, and for the reasons I was saying, if I figured I'm not getting any better hands to fold, and I'm only getting worse hands that I beat that I want in the hand, I'm getting them to fold. So I figured I'll call, and I expected the blinds to fold, but they didn't. The small blind called, and the big blind did fold. So we got one guy all in for $21. The guy to my right with about 600 or 700, he flat calls, I call, and then the small blind calls, and we go to the turn with 120 in the pot. The turn is the Jack of Hearts, which completes the rainbow, so there's no flush possibility out there. So the board now is 4-4-9 Jack rainbow. Small blind checks. Middle position, so the guy to my right with 600 or 700 bucks, he also checks. And now it's on me. And at this point, I feel pretty confident that I got the best hand, because I figured if one of them had a 4, they would probably lead there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like with 120 in the pot, I should bet something to try to get some money out of a 9, or maybe if one of the guys had King Queen or King Jack or something that they were sticking around with, maybe I could get some money from that.
Yeah, you definitely should have the best hand, 9 out of 10 times here, and in which case you want to get them to put more money in the pot.
Okay. I with 120 in the pot, what are you thinking I should throw out as a bet?
67.
67. Okay.
I don't know why. It's just kind of a random number.
A little bit above half pot?
Yeah. But I don't know. I like to put English on my bets. That is, I like to bet odd values just because it's odd and people don't quite know what to make of it. I would expect in the normal course of events to make the bet, have everybody fold, and then I go to showdown against the all-in player.
Yeah.
Anything that is other than that, like somebody suddenly wakes up and check raises me all in, I get a big problem. Yeah. So one of the things I'm thinking about before I make that foreclosure bet, I'm thinking about a couple of things. Is it bad to let another free card come? Well, it's not terrible because the hands that can beat me are probably already there waiting to spring a check raise trap. If somebody's sticking around with King Queen, I'm playing the hand so weakly that they might try to take a stab at the pot if a king or a queen comes on the river. Or if somebody hit their jack but they're not happy with it on the turn, let's say ace jack came along for the ride and now made top pair, but maybe he's hoping to check raise or maybe he's hoping to go to showdown with that hand. Either way, he might take a stab at the river if I haven't bet the turn. I'm not saying you made a mistake in betting the turn. I'm just saying that there's a way of looking at it, and depending on who the players are and what their tendencies are, you might say, for the sake of avoiding the possible check raise that will make me want to throw up in my mouth,
yeah,
and for the sake of getting what somebody thinks is a value bet out of somebody on the river, I might just check there. I don't think that I have much to risk in terms of giving away a free card.
Yeah. Okay.
So what happened?
That's an interesting point. Okay, I bet a little bit less than half pot, and my reasoning was I wanted to get action from a jack if anyone had a jack, and I didn't think anyone had a 4 at this point, and I didn't want to drive him out, so I bet 50. I got a call from the small blind, and the guy to my right folds. So I was kind of surprised about that. I didn't think the small blind would call after having checked both the flop and the turn, but that's what he did. He called my $50 bet. The guy to my right with 600 or 700, he folded, and we go to the river. And the river is the king of hearts, and so the final board is 4, 4, 9, jack, king, rainbow.
$220 in there.
$220 in the pot.
Nice pot.
And the small blind leads out for $60.
Yep.
This is where I kind of threw up on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. I wish the river had been like a 3. Then it would have been
4?
Easy. Yeah, 4 would have been a lot nicer, or a 6. But if it were a 3, I think I could almost. But it being a high card, then I started thinking, okay, well, if he had 10-4, we're splitting. If he has 8-4, we're splitting. If he has 7-4, we're splitting. 5-4. I started running through all the hands that we split, and the ones that we didn't was Ace-4 and Queen-4.
And
why would he lead there without a 4? I don't think he's betting a king there.
Well, he's betting super small, so he could be just trying to control the size of the pot. If he's got any pair, I mean, a $220 pot betting 60 is nothing. If he thinks he's probably doesn't want to call a $150 bet. I mean, that would be my first instinct.
What they call a blocking bet.
Yeah. I mean, if he's got a 4, I think he's bombing it, or that's what I would do. But
I'm still thinking that I'm seeing monsters under the bed, but I'm still thinking that his play is consistent with, it's not consistent with pocket kings because he should have raised pre-flop.
Yeah.
It's not entirely inconsistent with pocket jacks because people will play pocket jacks all kinds of crazy ways because they're such a damnable hand.
Right.
They say there's 3 ways to play pocket jacks, all wrong.
I've heard that same saying.
If you hear anybody else say it, you tell them I came up with it.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I'm hoping that it's a king who's getting out of line with what he now thinks is the best hand. I'm thinking the way that I played the hand, the way that you played the hand, a certain player could believe that I was never, that maybe I got a bad 9. That is to say, they should put me on a 4, but out of optimism, they might not put me on a 4. They might think they have the best hand, and they're betting small to control the size of the pot. If I raise there, I'm more likely raising with a bluff than with a hand that has showdown value, because all the hands that can call my raise crush me.
Clearly, we can never fold here. If for some reason we run into a bigger 4 or a straight or whatever. I mean, we're getting ridiculous price. We're getting 4.5 to 1.
It made it easy not to fold. I can call $60 for curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I was just making that clear. The choice is either call or raise, you're saying.
Yeah, and my rule of thumb is don't raise on the river when the only hand that can call you can beat you. There's just no real money in it, but you refine your thinking and you realize that there are hands that can call you that can't beat you, and that's where you find your thin value raises or thin value bets. But because so many players will slow play a monster from the small blind, just letting the rest of the table run the action, and then suddenly he leads out on the river, I'm suspicious enough of that I'm not going to raise, even if I'm risking value. Because again, if I raise, suppose I raise a little 2.5 times his bet, and he comes back over the top. Now I forget what stack sizes are. I don't know if we're close to all in or not. To the point where if he raises, I have to call.
Yeah.
Based on what you've said and how I'm visualizing the hand, I'm going to call there and hope for the best.
Yeah, okay.
What'd you do?
I called. I figured the same thing you did, that if I raise, I'm only getting called by better, and the hands that I beat are folding, so I didn't see any value in that. A part of me wished he had bet a little bit bigger, and then a part of me wished he hadn't bet, and that I could have bet bigger, and then when I kind of realized, well, there's not much I can do against this bet except for call, so I tossed in 60, and he turned over queen 4. And so his queen played, and that was that. Then I was wondering if I should have even played 6-4 in the beginning. And I think that's where the error was I tossed in the $6 when I probably should have tossed in the 2 napkins.
The poker author told you it was a bad idea, and the sputard here told you, hey.
I would say that's your takeaway right there. DPCH. Don't play crap hands.
Some of your other acronyms I still use when I play on online poker that I learned from your books. The calls raises with cheese and the raises with cheese and all those little
RWC, right?
RWC, yes.
I would have lost more. I would have raised the river because I think it's such a small bet. I mean, if I had a queen 4 in his spot, I would be either raising the turn or going for bigger value on the river. So he would have got more out of me. I would have raised the river and hope to get called by 1 pair.
In another scenario, you raise big pre-flop, he re-raises, you call because you got a set of 4s, you got trip 4s, and then you lose 2 more 4s. So yeah, I would say that was your second least worst outcome.
Okay.
Your least worst outcome would have been to fold. Hey, speaking of folding, guys, I'm going to have to wrap this up now.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
John, we appreciate your time. Can you tell us quickly for people listening where they can find your books?
Just go to Amazon and search my name, John Vorhaus, V as in victory, Orhaus. They're all there. Most of them are also on Google Play, if you prefer Google Play. Most of them are in print. All of them, of course, are in electronic form. Each and every one of them is a precious gem, not a word out of place, I can guarantee that, except for the typographical errors I never found. My website, johnvorhaus.com. I tweet, for no apparent reason, at TrueFactBarFact, because there are two classes of reality, things that are true and things that sound true in bars late at night. And I secretly control the world from johnvorhaus.com. Guys, can I suggest that we do this again sometime? This is a lot of fun, but my clock is ticking. And
hey,
so,
man, that's fine. We appreciate the time.
But I'd love to do it again. It's good chat.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, we'd love to have you back, man. We appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
My pleasure. Take care, guys.